Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. You ever encounter those weeks where you expected there to be a lot more chaos, and then things wound up being kinda normal? Yeah, that was this week. It almost seems like it was resetting to be less weird than usual, with only a small album bomb from Big Sean, and nothing from 6ix9ine. Guess the SoundCloud waifu and his meme are finally played out, thank God. Especially with more of his tricks being exposed and then removed or pushed out of the way. Good. Well, anyway, we're going to start with the top 10 here, where to no surprise, WAP by Cardi B featuring Megan Thee Stallion returned to the number 1. The streaming, the YouTube, they're enormous. The radio run is still moving, and it even has a bit of a sales recovery. Not bad. Now, it didn't come close to the colossal sales that Dynamite by BTS had at number 2, but when your radio run starts to stall out and your streaming starts to fall off, you're not going to hold the top spot. But holding at number 3, we got Laugh Now, Cry Later by Drake featuring Lil Durk because streaming is supporting its own radio run despite some weak sales. I still think, depending on how well streaming traction will hold, this might be a contender for longer than certain people want. Okay, for longer than I want, let's be honest here. Then we got Rockstar by DaBaby featuring Roddy Ricch at number 4, which pretty much got a last-ditch boost thanks to the radio while its streaming continues to slide away, which is also not an escape given to Blinding Lights by The Weeknd, somehow holding on at number 5 despite losing pretty much everywhere. What I'd argue is a much stronger contender is Mood by 24kGoldn and Ian Dior up to number 6. The streaming, it's rock solid, the sales are there, and it's currently on one hell of a radio run. I've been saying it for a while now, this is a major contender, and it's still a really good song. Blew right past Watermelon Sugar by Harry Styles at number 7, not surprising, as a good sales week can't prop up radio instability, and What's Poppin' by Jack Harlow and crew at number 8, which might be stable on streaming, but spent the week wavering on the radio with some really questionable sales. Then we got Savage Love by Josh685 and Jason Derulo at number 9, and I'm still waiting for this song to make its move, and it's just not happening. The sales are there, it's on a radio run, but the streaming keeps holding us back. Perplexing and probably very telling. Finally, thanks to the video, we got a re-entry into the top 10. At number 10, Pop Star by DJ Khaled featuring Drake, which might have just given enough of a sales boost to match the song's considerable streaming and quietly really strong radio. Yeah, that one did kind of sneak up on me, I will admit it. Now anyway, our losers and dropouts. And there were a few big ones in the latter category, specifically in country, with Done by Chris Jansen, I Love My Country by Flora Georgia Line, God Whispered Your Name by Keith Urban, and Be a Light by Thomas Rhett and the whole posse he brought along making their expected exits. Now our losers are a bit of a split between songs that just needed to continue to fall off, Need It by Migos and Youngboy Never Broke Again at 99, Why We Drink by Justin Moore at 93, My Future by Billie Eilish at 90, and Seven Summers by Morgan Wallen just crashing at 72. I mean, what AstroTurf was behind this song initially? I gotta ask. And songs that dropped off from their debut naturally. And that group includes Ice Cream by Blackpink and Selena Gomez, unsurprisingly at 49, Starting Over by Chris Stapleton at 83, and Over Now by Calvin Harris and The Weeknd at 78. Actually, not really a great weekend for The Weeknd here, as Smile with the late Juice WRLD also fell down to 74. Beyond that, One Margarita by Luke Bryan is making its expected exit at 56. It's going to have its year-end list spot, don't worry if you care there. And Casey Talk by Youngboy Never Broke Again went down to 87, which I expect will rebound if Youngboy sees the album bomb success I suspect he will get coming up next week. Now on to our gains and returns. They did feel a little weird this week. Do It by Chloe and Holly. They got a really big remix with Doja Cat, City Girls, and Mulatto, so that probably is the reason why it went back up to 63, but our gains are mostly continuations of some established traction. I've already mentioned the rebound for DJ Khaled's Pop Star, but then we had One of Them Girls by Lee Brice up to 22, quietly becoming on the mainstream Hot 100 his biggest hit, followed by Lemonade by Internet Money, Gunna, Don Toliver, and Nav at 38 for being inexplicably popular on streaming. I mean, I don't get it, but I got friends who like it. And IOI by Surf Mesa featuring Emily at 59 because breezy radio filler. Outside of that, yeah, Breaking Me by Topic and A7S got its boost to 60, and One Beer by Hardy, Lauren Elena, and Devin Dawson got a spike up to 57, but I want to talk about More Than My Hometown by Morgan Wallen up to 53. Yes, obviously it's got radio support and sales, that's how it works in Nashville, but the fact that Morgan Wallen's mostly stable radio success and the fascinating drop-off of 7 Summers gives me the impression that somebody was trying to work TikTok and some other tricks to give 7 Summers an artificial shot of life that probably doesn't represent Morgan Wallen's true popularity, which might be more in line with the success of Chasin' You and More Than My Hometown. So which is still considerable, but for a few weeks Morgan Wallen was the talk of so many country outlets because of that sudden burst of unexpected popularity, and probably got himself way more free publicity as the next big thing. I mean, I'll give credit to Morgan Wallen's promo team for pulling that off. This was a trick that worked on a lot of folks, and those of us closer to the grassroots, we should be aware when these tricks are happening, because it's gonna happen again, and the song will likely not be anywhere near as good. Knowing Nashville, just watch. But one quick thing to mention before we get on to our new arrivals. As of this week, Billboard has rolled out their Global Hot 200, a list of songs aggregated from across the world. Now, a few things to note here. I'm not sure what the recurrent rules are, if they even exist. I mean, Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody's on the chart right now. And while it contains sales, streaming, and YouTube, it does not seem like it has radio in any capacity. So that means specific genres reliant on that format are gonna get hedged out. Now, what concerns me is that, given a lot of stream farming and YouTube botting is done worldwide to juice numbers, but often filtered out when considering just the Hot 100, which considers American numbers, I'm curious how Billboard and those other platforms accommodated for that, otherwise this chart could wind up getting skewed. Nevertheless, it's a chart I'm going to be watching and tracking for my own personal records, but I will not be covering it on a daily or weekly basis. This may change in the next Billboard year because the United States does not run everything, and as a Canadian, I would not mind a global perspective taking precedent on this channel, but to me it'll be dependent on how much fluctuation the chart experiences, and that might take some time for me to observe, so we'll have to see. Ask me again come the end of November. But alright, with all that, on to our newest arrivals, starting with number 97, Why Would I Stop by Big Sean.
Hold up, why would I stop? Bitch, why would I stop?
So we got 5 Big Sean songs debuting this week, most of which are the first songs off the album and the one song that got a video, and if that is not the warning shot that making bloated albums aren't the guarantee for massive chart-spanning debuts unless you're a top-shelf megastar, and Big Sean has never been this, overloading your album to stream troll, it only makes the album worse. And it's those missteps that makes Big Sean playing the whole effortless bragging card all the more hard to ignore on this song, especially off that warped, wiry guitar, the drowned out air horn, and his triplet flows on a pretty rote trap beat. Now, to his credit, there's a lot of subtle wordplay across each bar here that has shown Big Sean improving. The problem is that once you get past that, there's not much else that really lands in a punch in a higher weight class. A lot of paranoia, keeping it in the family, a few passing references to other better songs from other better artists, and outside of that, it's basically an intro, and not one of his more interesting ones either, so let's move on. Number 96, Everywhere But On by Matt Stell.
Guess it's just one place I haven't gone. I've moved everywhere but on.
This is one of those cases where the B and C list men in Nashville country have done a really poor job differentiating themselves, because while I remembered Prayed For You existed last year, I could not recall much about the song or Matt Stell in particular. Apparently this is his follow-up, also from that same EP that had his first hit, well, over a year after the EP came out, so nice job capitalizing on your momentum here. And while I do not think this is precisely bad, I can see exactly why it would be just as forgettable. The blended drum machines and live drums with the cymbals being louder than damn near everything else in the mix, a not particularly distinctive vocal presence or guitar line, or even the guitar solo on the bridge seems a little bit suffocated, and it's got one decent lyrical conceit. He's moved around everywhere, but he hasn't moved on from this girl, which is an easy way to crowbar in your listing of country things as a hangover from bro country. Look, I hate to say it, but maybe the reason momentum has been so sporadic for this guy is because there really isn't much here, because I think I'm going to wind up forgetting this song in record time. Next, number 95, Body Language by Big Sean featuring Jhene Aiko and Dolla.
Your lips taste so sweet.
This is probably close to one of the better songs on Detroit 2, and none of it has anything to do with Big Sean. Now, to his credit, he's not terrible in what he's expected to do. Open up, be a little bit more relaxed with Jhene, who for some ungodly reason is still with him. But the problem is that a song like this really relies on charisma and chemistry, and while Jhene can deliver a lot of the latter, even with Dolla stepping up for support, Big Sean just is not nailing the vibe for me. Hell, you could even argue the production's giving him an assist with the backing vocal flip of a Sean Harris song and more of a restrained, sandy groove which he can ride well, but Big Sean just sounds dejected and tired throughout the entire song, and not even in a way that feels all that meditative. And I'm being critical here because outside of Big Sean, the song really is great. Solid production, Jhene and Dolla can easily sell this. I like the sample, but as such, it's merely good. It should be a lot better. Number 91, Love You Like I Used To by Russell Dickerson.
I could ever love you more than I did, but baby I do. I don't love you like I used to.
No jokes here. I was in Nashville briefly last year, and there was an opportunity for me to get tickets to see Thomas Rhett, Dustin Lynch, and Russell Dickerson live in concert. And I'm fairly certain it was the inclusion of Russell Dickerson on that bill that had me in a dive bar in East Nashville instead, because he sure as hell is not that good. Now, this is a single push and a rollout for his upcoming sophomore album, and I think where the song goes awry is actually a bit tricky to pin down. Sure, Dickerson isn't much of a vocal presence, and the song starts off with some impressively stiff drum machines, but it does actually pick up a bit more melody. Overall, it sounds fine until you dig into the content. See, when you have the phrase, "I don't love you like I used to," which is the foundation of your entire hook, the implication is normally that something isn't right, or it's not gonna end well. But Russell Dickerson is trying to make it here mean, no, we might have been good before, but now things are even better. But if you're describing all of your emotions in a commonly framed negative phrase, it kind of warps in your mind how the song appears, and somehow makes it a lot less interesting because now there's that gap of where things didn't work that gets no attention or detail and yet weirdly stands out. In other words, it's a weirdly constructed song that only sours its appeal with its odd elements. It could have been just forgettable. Next, number 82, Deep Reverence by Big Sean featuring Nipsey Hussle.
Black love me with a deep reverence.
And I'm the Don cause the street said it.
I'm actually relatively pleased that Big Sean stacked a few of his better songs closer to the front of the album, and again, this is one of them. It helps that he opens up the song with Nipsey's shorter verse before getting into the aftermath of his passing and how he's coping, piecing things up with Kendrick Lamar as he continues on his own hustle, focusing more on black ownership and a process of building succession, and his own personal demons, which include credibly sold anxiety and depression, which he hasn't really known how to handle, and the possibility that he and a partner lost a child in a miscarriage, and this time with a more straightforward flow and less obviously clunky lines, although the one about girls being obsessed with social media and they could be writing encyclopedias, that's iffy, but the song does feel more weighty and introspective. Probably helped along by the mostly obvious Drake influence in a lot of his flow, but the rougher trap skitter and the sharper keening synths around him does feel more distinctive in terms of his production, and it helps Big Sean make this more of his own song. Another solid highlight from the album? Yeah, I'll say it. this is good stuff. If you're curious, check it out. Number 69, Lithuania by Big Sean featuring Travis Scott.
Big rings in a row, all down my fingers. I can't even hold my baggage claim.
Look, I mentioned this in the review on the main channel and on the Pulse, but it bears repeating. While I understand why Big Sean works with trap artists on trap beats, I'm not at all convinced it's a workable lane for him. And it starts with a Travis collab that got the video. The off-key guitars off the muffled snare drums from Hit Boy, where I kept feeling that there was a drop to a sharper hi-hat that only occurs when Big Sean's verse came in. So let me get this straight. You don't put Travis Scott on the trap percussion, but you put Big Sean on it, which seems crazy to me because Big Sean can do more than your standard triplet flow flex. Now granted, the entire song is some pretty empty bragging where neither artist is all that interesting outside of why the hell this song is called Lithuania, which some folks on Genius are claiming that it's tied to how that country got passed around during World War II. Now to me that feels like a complete stretch and another indictment of why you don't base your lyrical interpretations off the crowdsourced opinions on Genius, where really, if I'm being honest, it seems a lot more like Travis Scott was looking to fill in a rhyme in a weird way, and it didn't really care about the meaning. I mean, he's done that before. We've seen that on multiple albums. Overall, I don't know, it's not terrible by any means, but it's not one of the better songs on the album, and adding more forgettable Travis Scott collaborations onto the Hot 100, not a win. Let's move on. Number 65, Wolves by Big Sean featuring Post Malone.
Playing with your life, going against the pack, that's risk in your life. Better play it right, yeah, you better play it right.
And here we have another collaboration I don't think works at all. Not for Big Sean's lack of trying. I get him trying to play up the darker, my friends will kill you vibe to play into his paranoia, and that could even make sense on a spacier trap progression. Hell, I like him here more than on Lithuania. But then Post Malone shows up, and it feels like a bit of a regression for him. I like the thicker, smokier trap he was making last year. Look at a song like Circles. On a more spare beat, he sounds really unsupported and not all that impressive, especially when the groove isn't great and Post Malone's gonna spend most of the song bragging about jewelry, which doesn't match the tone at all. Now apparently A$AP Rocky was originally intended for this song, and look, given his content, I don't think he would have been that much better, but it still feels like a cut made to satisfy label obligations rather than any sort of creative spark, especially as it completely kills the flow and its placement on the album, even if I think the hook is not bad. So yeah, not terrible again, but I can't recommend this. Next, number 64, Relación by Sech, ROSALIA, Daddy Yankee, J Balvin, and Farruko. Am I the only one who's starting to get a little bit tired of reggaeton and Latin trap artists just overloading the songs with guest artists to game search the algorithms? I mean, I get why they're doing it for the crossover, but I also think it can detract from a strong individual performance if everybody doesn't deliver on the same level. But with this song, I can't say any one of them stand out all that much beyond ROSALIA. And that's more because she actually winds up as the focal presence of the content, playing a girl who was abused in a relationship who is now free, confident, and turning all the tables. Not a fan of how the abuse might be implied as the main contributing factor, but every other guy here is playing the spectator, so I'm not expecting a lot of insight. And you know what, for Daddy Yankee and Farruko of all people, it'd be fine. They've got the character and flair in their delivery to stand out, but outside of that, I think the only reason Sech is even here is because it's his underlying song they remixed. And even then, I wouldn't say the production's all that great. The reggaeton percussion might hit a little harder, but there's barely any melody that supports the bass and the beat. And when it's here, just underscores the vocal line. In other words, it feels like the names were just here to get this popping up, because otherwise, there's not much else. Next, number 62, The Voice by Lil Durk.
We all change, you say I changed alone. Sleepless night, barely changing clothes. You know damn right you was wrong.
Alright, credit to Lil Durk here. He's riding the biggest guest verse of his career thus far to some actual traction on the Hot 100, with this as the lead-off single to his next album, where I'm actually a little bit surprised how well this debuted. And I I wish I liked this a lot more than I do, which might as well be the tagline when it comes to most Lil Durk that I've heard, but it's especially true here. The production for one had a ton of promise. The brighter keys, the guitar, it gave me a little bit more of a textured and soulful Rod Wave vibe, and it could have really worked with the sharper, crunchier Chicago drill percussion, but then we got the auto-tune crooning for Lil Durk on that hook, and he just sounds suffocated and swamped out here. It feels like a really clumsy overstep to create that effect that could have been undersold with just a little bit less auto-tune, and it worked just as well. And hell, I don't think the mixing as a whole is all that good. It feels unrefined and not in the fun, organic way. And it's kind of a shame because the content also kinda clicks. Again, you can make the Youngboy Never Broke Again, Polo G, or even Rod Wave comparisons, but Lil Durk does bring in some unique detail and insight. His friend crying in jail after getting 39 years, the insomnia that drives him and his relationship apart, how he can't even bring himself to cry at funerals and can't even mourn right, and the reference to how he can't even vote for someone who might actually make things better and bring change because felons can't vote. That rings particularly hard, especially as that's real disenfranchisement that's happening right now. Honestly, it might be a song where the good elements might wind up cutting through the rough edges in a similar way to how it did for Murder on My Mind for YNW Melly last year. As it is though, it's really good. I want this to be great. Let's hope it grows on me. And finally, number 29, Hit Different by SZA featuring Ty Dolla $ign.
It's different when I'm sitting here alone all by myself. It's different when I think you might be with somebody, yeah.
I think just about everyone is annoyed with the whole social media theater going on between SZA and TDE label head Punch. I mean, we know your adversarial back and forth is a carefully timed game, just like half of it was last time with Control. You're just building things up for a pretty big return, with Ty Dolla $ign showing up for support, because why not add some fuel to the fire for a big single that's being produced by the Neptunes? And you know what? This is a good song. The hook might be a little bit repetitive, but SZA and Ty Dolla $ign have decent chemistry. I think the sharper, more dense percussion does balance everything else in the watery mix. Maybe even a little bit too watery, as there are some points where it feels like both Ty Dolla $ign and SZA are getting swallowed up a little bit. And I'll say this, the storytelling's not bad here either. It's a song about the side partners in an open relationship, and the messy dynamic when you start catching feelings, and you want to deflect from it by playing distant from that side piece despite yourself, but ultimately still does hit different. I mean, it's a complicated vibe, and while I do think the hook could have done a little more to sell it better, flesh it out, it's still pretty solid R&B. It's not either artist's best, Control still has stronger cuts, and I would argue Ty Dolla $ign sounded better on Body Language just this week, but this is good. Wouldn't mind sticking around. I'll take it. And honestly, it did lead to a tougher choice for the best and worst of the week than I did expect. Now for the best, you know, I wanted to say Body Language, but I think Deep Reverence felt like it played into Big Sean's strengths more with Nipsey Hussle. So it's gonna get the best of the week with, I don't know, I think The Voice by Lil Durk is gonna get the honorable mention. I get the feeling if this song sticks around, it might just sneak up on me, and it's got some real power to it, and really Big Sean was the biggest lodestone dragging back Body Language. Now the worst, yeah, Love You Like I Used To by Russell Dickerson's easily getting that, but I think dishonorable mention might go to Lithuania by Big Sean and Travis Scott. It just feels like the clunkiest song here, and I really hope it falls out fast, even with that video. Next week though, let's see if Youngboy Never Broke Again actually comes through with a meaty album bomb. It'll be interesting, especially given some of those singles have not been all that good. But hey, until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse.